My mom tried to force me to donate a kidney to my brother who bullied me all my life, but the tests revealed a dark family secret that destroyed their marriage. Growing up with my younger brother Marcus was like living in a constant nightmare. Our 3-bedroom suburban house, which looked so perfect from the outside with its white picket fence and well-maintained garden, felt more like a prison where I was serving a life sentence for a crime I didn't commit. Most siblings have their fights and disagreements, but what Marcus did went far beyond normal sibling rivalry. He had this way of making everything seem like my fault, of twisting situations so perfectly that our parents, especially Mom, would always take his side. He was a master manipulator, even as a child. From the moment he could talk, he seemed to have made it his life's mission to make my life as miserable as possible. But what made it worse was how my parents, especially my mom, always enabled his behavior. I still remember the day in middle school when Marcus started a rumor that I had lice. I was already struggling to fit in, being the quiet, bookish type in a school that valued popularity and athletics. Marcus knew exactly how to make it worse. It spread like wildfire, and suddenly no one would sit next to me at lunch. When I told my mom, her response was, "Well, maybe if you washed your hair more often, people wouldn't believe such things." I was 12, and I showered every day. That was the moment I realized my mom would always take his side. High school wasn't any better. Marcus would accidentally spill drinks on my homework, delete my assignments from the shared family computer, and even stole my diary to read excerpts of it in front of his friends. Every time I complained to my parents, my mom would say I was being too sensitive and that siblings tease each other. My dad would just sigh and tell us to work it out ourselves. Things got progressively worse as we got older. By high school, Marcus had perfected the art of making my life miserable while maintaining his golden child image. He'd sit at the popular table at lunch, surrounded by his adoring friends, while deliberately knocking my books off my desk when he passed by in the hallways. He'd volunteer to help teachers after class, earning their praise, while spreading vicious rumors about me behind my back. But the breaking point, the moment that finally shattered any hope I had of having a normal sibling relationship, came during my senior year. I had been secretly dating Will, a guy from my chemistry class, for 3 months. Will was different from anyone I'd ever met, kind, understanding, and genuinely interested in me. We would study together in the library, sharing whispered conversations between the shelves, stealing quick glances during class. For the first time in my life, I felt seen and appreciated. I hadn't told anyone in my family because I knew Marcus would find a way to ruin it. But somehow, he found out. Not only did he tell our parents, who were very conservative about dating, but he also created a fake social media profile pretending to be me and sent embarrassing messages to Will. By the time I found out, Will had blocked me everywhere, and my reputation at school was in shambles. When I confronted Marcus about it, he just laughed and said, "Maybe if you weren't such a loser, you wouldn't have to hide your relationships." My mom's response? "Well, you shouldn't have been dating behind our backs anyway." I moved out for college as soon as I could, putting as much distance between myself and my family as possible. I worked multiple jobs to support myself, refusing to take any money from my parents because I knew it would come with strings attached. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, ate ramen noodles for dinner more times than I cared to admit, and worked every spare hour I could at the campus coffee shop and library. But every struggle was worth it because each day put more distance between me and my toxic family. Over the years, I built a life for myself. I became a successful marketing executive at a top firm in the city. My journey wasn't easy. I started in the mailroom, taking every opportunity to learn and grow. I'd stay late after work, volunteering for additional projects, attending every seminar and workshop I could find. My colleagues probably thought I was obsessed, but the truth was, I needed to prove to myself that I was capable of success, that all those years of being told I wasn't good enough were lies. I worked my way up from intern to junior copywriter to account manager and finally to executive position. Each promotion felt like a personal victory, a middle finger to everyone who had ever doubted me. I remember the day I got my executive office. I stood there alone after hours, looking out over the city skyline, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not from sadness, but from pride. I married a wonderful man named David, whom I met at a coffee shop 5 years ago. He was the complete opposite of my family, kind, supportive, and genuinely interested in my feelings and thoughts. When I first told him about my family dynamics, he didn't dismiss my pain or tell me to get over it like others had. Instead, he listened, really listened, and helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't normal or okay. Our wedding was small and intimate, just close friends and a few distant relatives. Neither of my parents attended. I didn't even send them an invitation. Marcus sent a generic congratulations text 3 days after the ceremony. But you know what? It was perfect. For the first time in my life, I was celebrating a major milestone without the dark cloud of family drama hanging over me, and finally found peace. I maintained minimal contact with my family, showing up for major holidays with a generic gift and leaving before any drama could start. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Until last month, when everything changed. My mom called me out of the blue, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Marcus needed a kidney transplant. His had been failing for months. His doctors had discovered that both of his kidneys were failing rapidly, likely due to an undiagnosed genetic condition. He'd been on dialysis for weeks, but it wasn't a long-term solution. The doctors were clear: without a transplant, his prognosis was grim. None of our immediate family members were matches. She wanted me to get tested. Initially, I refused. The thought of giving any part of myself to someone who had caused me so much pain seemed absurd. But then my dad called, and for the first time in my life, he actually pleaded with me. "I know things haven't been perfect," he said, "but he's still your brother." After talking it over with David, I agreed to get tested. Not because I wanted to donate, I still wasn't sure about that, but because I thought it would finally get everyone off my back. David supported my decision but made me promise to prioritize my own well-being. "You don't owe them anything," he reminded me as I scheduled the appointment. "This is your choice." The testing process itself was surprisingly straightforward: blood draws, tissue typing, medical history reviews. What wasn't straightforward was the emotional toll. Every time I sat in that sterile hospital room, I couldn't help but think about all the times Marcus had hurt me, all the times my mother had dismissed my pain. Was I really ready to literally give a piece of myself to someone who had never shown me an ounce of kindness? What I didn't expect was for the test results to turn our entire family upside down. The doctor called me into her office with an unusual expression on her face. "There's something you need to know," she said carefully. "The test results show that you and Marcus aren't full siblings. In fact, you're not biologically related at all." I sat there stunned as she explained that while we shared our mother's DNA, we had different fathers. My mind went blank. All those years of favoritism suddenly made a twisted kind of sense. My mom had been protecting her secret by keeping Marcus close and pushing me away. Every memory of my childhood suddenly took on a new, darker meaning. The way she would criticize my appearance but praise Marcus's. How she'd dismiss my achievements but celebrate his smallest accomplishments. The times she'd tell me I was just like your father with that slight grimace, she wasn't talking about the man who raised me, but comparing me to someone else entirely. When I confronted my mom with the results, she broke down completely. Through her tears, she confessed that she'd had an affair with her college sweetheart who had unexpectedly come back into her life around the time Marcus was conceived. She had always suspected the truth but had been too afraid to confirm it. My dad was devastated. 25 years of marriage, and every moment of it had been tainted by this lie. I watched as the strong, stoic man I knew crumbled before my eyes. He kept asking why over and over, but Mom had no answers that could satisfy the depth of his pain. The man who had always been passive, who had stood by while my mom favored Marcus, finally showed some emotion. He moved out that same day. Marcus didn't take the news well either. When he found out, he locked himself in his room and refused to talk to anyone for days. The golden child status he'd enjoyed all his life suddenly felt hollow. All those years of bullying me, of making my life miserable, and it turned out we weren't even fully related. The family imploded after that. My dad filed for divorce, unable to forgive my mom's decades of deception. He also couldn't look at Marcus the same way anymore, which sent Marcus into a depression on top of his health issues. My mom tried to blame me for destroying the family by insisting on getting tested, but even she knew how ridiculous that sounded. What's ironic is that through all this chaos, Marcus actually found a kidney donor, a distant cousin who saw his story on social media. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus, who had spent years making my life miserable, was saved by the kindness of a relative who barely knew him. Sometimes life has a strange way of working things out. He's recovering now, but things will never be the same between any of us. Last week, I received a letter from Marcus. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I found the courage to open it. When I finally did, I was surprised by how much his handwriting had changed. It was shakier, less confident than the bold scrawl he used to deface my school books. For the first time in his life, he apologized. Not just a generic sorry for everything but a detailed, 4-page acknowledgement of his behavior. He wrote about specific incidents, the lice rumor, the diary incident, the Jake situation, and took full responsibility for each one. He talked about how the revelation had forced him to examine his behavior over the years, how therapy had helped him understand that his special treatment hadn't just hurt me, it had turned him into someone he didn't want to be anymore. He wrote about his recovery from the transplant, how the experience of nearly dying had changed his perspective on life. He described the moment he woke up after surgery, feeling grateful to be alive but also deeply ashamed of the person he'd been. The letter ended with a request, not for forgiveness, he wrote, because he knew he hadn't earned that yet, but for a chance to try to be better, to show me he could change. I haven't responded yet. Part of me wants to give him a chance, to see if this experience has truly changed him. But another part remembers all the years of torment, all the times he made me feel worthless while my mom cheered him on. David says I should take my time deciding, that there's no rush to respond. My dad calls occasionally now. We're building a relationship that we never had before, bonding over our shared experience of being deceived by the woman who should have loved us most. He apologized for not protecting me when I was younger, for being too weak to stand up to my mom's obvious favoritism. As for my mom, she's living with her sister now, finally facing the consequences of her actions. She still tries to reach out, to explain herself, but I'm not ready to hear her excuses. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive her, but right now, the hurt is still too fresh. Every time I see her number pop up on my phone, I remember all the times she chose him over me, all the times she made me feel like I wasn't enough. The weight of those memories is still too heavy to bear. The funny thing is, these test results that were supposed to be about saving Marcus's life ended up saving mine instead. They freed me from the burden of trying to understand why my mother never loved me the way she loved him. They gave me answers to questions I had carried my whole life. I'm in therapy now, working through years of family trauma. David has been my rock through all of this, spending countless nights holding me while I cried, listening to me process decades of hurt and betrayal. He's taken days off work to accompany me to therapy sessions, learned about trauma and family dynamics to better support me, and never once complained about the emotional roller coaster this has put us through. There was one night, about a week after we found out the truth, when I completely broke down. I had found an old family photo album in our spare room, and seeing those pictures, birthday parties where mom was clearly favoring Marcus, family vacations where I was always slightly separated from everyone else, triggered something in me. David found me sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered photographs, sobbing uncontrollably. Instead of trying to fix things or offer empty platitudes, he simply sat down next to me and held my hand. "You didn't deserve any of this," he said quietly. "And it's okay to be angry, to be hurt, to feel whatever you're feeling." His words, his steady presence, his unwavering support, they've been my anchor when everything else has felt like it's falling apart, reminding me that I'm worthy of love even if my own mother couldn't see it. Yesterday, I ran into Marcus's biological father at the grocery store. He had no idea about any of this, and seeing him was like looking at an older version of Marcus. I didn't say anything, it wasn't my place to blow up another family, but it made me realize how many secrets people carry, how many lives are built on carefully constructed lies. It made me wonder about all the other families out there, living with their own hidden truths, their own unspoken stories. How many other children grew up feeling like outsiders in their own homes, never knowing why? The hardest part of all of this has been accepting that there are some questions I'll never have answers to. Why did my mom choose to stay with my dad if she was in love with someone else? Why did she take her guilt out on me instead of protecting me? How could she watch Marcus torment me for years and do nothing to stop it? I don't know what the future holds for my family. The truth has a way of changing everything it touches. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I can breathe. I'm no longer the family scapegoat, no longer the child who was never good enough. I'm just me, and finally, that feels like enough. Update: it's been 3 months since my last post, and a lot has changed. The divorce between my parents was finalized last week. Dad seems lighter somehow, like he's finally free from a weight he didn't even know he was carrying. He's started dating again, which is both weird and wonderful to see. Marcus completed his recovery from the transplant surgery and has been going to therapy. We've had a few coffee meetings, short, awkward conversations where we're both trying to figure out who we are to each other now. He's different without mom's influence, more genuine. Last week, he showed me some old family photos and apologized again for specific incidents from our childhood. It was the first time he'd acknowledged the details of his bullying instead of making a general apology. The biggest surprise came from Mom. After months of denial and blame shifting, she finally broke down and wrote me a real apology. Not just for the DNA revelation, but for years of emotional abuse and favoritism. She's also in therapy now, trying to understand why she made the choices she did. I'm not ready to forgive her yet, but it's a start. As for me, I'm doing better than I ever have. David and I are talking about starting a family of our own. We've been having long, deep conversations about parenting, about breaking generational trauma cycles, about creating a home filled with love and acceptance rather than competition and favoritism. David and I have both been seeing a family therapist to work through our own fears and expectations about becoming parents. The other day, we were talking about how we'd handle sibling relationships if we have multiple children. The conversation brought up a lot of emotions for me, but it also helped me realize how far I've come. Instead of being paralyzed by my past, I'm using it as a roadmap of what not to do. I know exactly what it feels like to be the less loved child, and I'm determined that no child of mine will ever experience that pain, and this time, I know exactly what kind of parent I don't want to be. Sometimes the truth hurts, but living with lies hurts more. I'm just grateful that those kidney tests gave me the answers I never knew I needed.